One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
Tony, you can't make me laugh before the show. Welcome to a live Facebook broadcast of Security Guy Radio with my secret co-host, Mr. Tony Sweet.
Hey, what's going on, Chuck?
Thanks for helping us out
my 2
here.
cups of coffee right there.
Yes, we're streaming live to the Facebook page today. Again, trying to work on the latest technology, and my regular staff of security expert couldn't make it because they work. They have real jobs, unlike you and I who do radio shows, right? But so thanks for joining in. So how you been? Everything been good?
Great. I'm excited about talking about some marijuana today.
Yes, it's the 420. What did I call it? The 420 security show, and I had to look 420 up, but you know where it comes from, right?
No, tell me.
All right. So, and our guest in a minute will probably get better at this, but it has something to do with some school kids, and they got in trouble, and they had to go to the 420 discipline class at school, and this was someplace up San Francisco way.
Of course.
and that time, or that's tied into that, like after school. What do you call it?
Special?
No,
Just kidding.
no. What when you get in trouble and you go to school? Detention.
Oh, detention.
Right?
Okay.
Some kind of is it 420 detention? Some kind of thing like that. And
they had
this
detention
turned
at
into
420.
Yeah, and then everybody got stoned or something. That's my understanding, and that's where it's a weird story, right?
I wouldn't have known that.
I know. And it's probably used to be a code for something, but people don't. Hey, I'm 420 friendly, man. Dude. Right.
Dude.
So I think this will be interesting. And today we have our guest. We'll introduce him right now. It's Mr. Brian Laslow, and he's streaming in and joining us. Brian, welcome to the show. How you been?
Oh, very good. How are you today?
Good. So Brian is a security expert, Tony, in this field, and he's written a book called The Marijuana Project, and you can see the book at themarijuanaproject.org and buy it there. And the reason I think this is important, first of all, I'm not an anti-drug guy. Well, I'm an anti-drug guy. I'm not necessarily anti-marijuana, but I just think this issue in security is overlooked, right?
Right.
Because everybody wants to smoke marijuana, but nobody thinks about the consequences. And as this industry grows and it's becoming regulated or not regulated, depending on where it is, it causes a serious problem. So when I was in the police academy a couple of years ago in an update on security for drugs, marijuana was the most violent of all the drug dealers.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you can bring a cocaine. Not that many people get killed because if you screw with the cocaine chain, something happens, right?
Right.
But marijuana, it's a bunch of independent proprietors and little shops and things like that, and it's all cash, right? So you mess with the cash and the guns come out, and it's very interesting.
That's true.
So, Brian, give us a little bit about your background. I like this kind of this. Look at this. Somebody's calling me. Okay, Aaron, my cousin Aaron's calling me for a real estate deal in Sacramento. I got to put you on hold there, Aaron. Sorry about that. Tell us about your background. How did you get into this? And it's very interesting.
Yes, well, I've been in the security industry basically my whole career. I started out owning a small installation firm, started out doing residential work and then into commercial work. And I sold that company in 99. I did some work for the Department of Justice for a couple of years. And then I started consulting in 2001. And, just in the process of that, about 3 years ago, got a call out of the blue from somebody that said they were wanted to put an application in for a medical marijuana facility in the state that I'm in, and I thought it was a joke because I didn't even realize the state had passed a medical marijuana law.
Right.
And so that started the journey of developing their whole program and then becoming the virtual security manager for their company. So really being embedded in the industry for about 2 years.
Or embedded.
Embedded.
Yeah, or embedded.
No pun intended.
I've just coined a new phrase for
There
the
you go.
business.
Right, there you go.
Good job.
And look, I knew nothing about it. Was never a drug user, and so it never, didn't know anything about it. And as I'm in it, I'm realizing, wow, this is quite a controversy. And I had an ethical dilemma, certainly in the beginning, of whether even to take a client on, because,
Sure.
I want to be known as the as the consultant that is in his industry,
Yeah.
and that turned out to be not that much of an issue, but certainly I learned a lot about the debate, the ethical debate, and the pros and cons, and what really goes on in the industry as opposed to what some people might want to tell you.
Now, did you have a law enforcement background before you got in this?
No, I did not.
Now, that's interesting.
I went. I like I said, I did a couple years of work for the Department of Justice, which was kind of a conversion from the owning an installation firm into becoming a consultant, but no law enforcement background.
So when I ran a guard company here in LA, it was a nationwide guard company that, as you know, Tony, the name that shall not be mentioned ever. All right. I was approached by a distributor here, and I guess they had several shops, and said, "Hey, we want you to take over the security." And I had to turn them down. Now, reason, I don't know. It's against the law federally, technically still, right? And the feds haven't reconciled that part, and it's locally it's legal. I had concerns about the safety of my guards, frankly, right? Are they going to get into marijuana use? Are they going to get accosted because there's homicides involved, things like that? And I'm wondering if a lot of people in this business, in the security for marijuana, have to be non-law enforcement people. Maybe, I don't know, because
that's very interesting. But and I found
what do you find?
Yeah, I found it interesting when I was going out to bids for both the installation contractors for the cameras and access control and burglary stuff that we had to do, and then the guard contractors. The reluctance was far more on the installation contractor side.
Oh, that's interesting.
They all had to, if it was a large national company, they had to go up the chain and ask, okay, can we do this? Can we not do this? And it ended up giving a contract to a very good firm, but a more local firm, not national. But the guard companies, interestingly enough, didn't seem to have the same dilemma. I just thought it was kind of at least in my area, it was kind of what's the word I'm looking for? A telling thing about what the difference of the two industries were. At least where I am, the guard company is pretty cutthroat, and the only thing that matters is the cost.
Oh, it's the cash. I mean, I could see an installer saying, "Okay, I'm going to put cameras in a marijuana facility, and if something goes wrong, which is a high probability, I got a problem liability in the future, right?
Yeah.
Guard company, I got a big giant cash flow all day long, and that's what I care about. And I got so much money coming in, I can fix my lawsuit or whatever it is. I can see that.
So it's just interesting. You had that dilemma because I didn't know what to expect, but I mean there was no issue with the guard company.
Yeah, they were throwing a lot of money at us to do it, and even with that kind of dough, I was like, nah, this will not end well.
I went, and I even put in the RFP that I put together to go out to the guard companies. I dictated what their hourly fee would be, and it was on the high end of what is the general rule in my area, because I wanted to make sure, similar to your concerns, that I was getting good people, and they weren't just gonna give me the whatever they had left over onto the project.
So let's break this down into a couple of things. We have a legal aspect, we have a moral aspect, if you want to say, and we have a medical aspect. There's kind of three tiers to this that I see. All right.
I agree.
So let's talk about the moral aspect to begin with.
Okay.
Drugs are, what they call malum per se to some people. They're just bad because they're drugs, and they're malum prohibitum, meaning they're against the law mostly, right? But marijuana is this thing in the middle where it's kind of quasi-decriminalized in a lot of places. Some places it's completely decriminalized. But you could still argue if it's decriminalized, it's still probably not a good thing morally to do, only because you don't just sit in your basement and smoke marijuana all by yourself. Eventually, grandma gets a whiff upstairs. Something happens at your job. It affects other people. I mean, just like if you drink too much, right?
Right.
So how did you wrestle this yourself personally when you got into this? What was your compass,
it's
I guess, on it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a great question. So, and it's different from when I started, from what I knew like a year and a half in.
Yeah.
So when I started, yes, I had to. Do I want to be involved in this? I'm not sure. And that's in talking to both colleagues and my wife and close friends about this. It became clear to me, okay, I need to make that distinction between recreational and medical. And if I had been a state that recreational was legal, and they wanted me to do this work, I would not have done it, because that would go against my moral standard.
Okay, that's an interesting point.
but because it was medical, and I had some people who I would not have expected, that had medical conditions over the years, that actually told me, if this had been legal before in our state, I probably would have been a patient, which kind of really woke me up and surprised me. So that's how I got over my personal moral debate in the beginning of, yes, I'm going to take on the client. It turns out, a year and a half later, that you learn, well, although I make the distinction between recreational and medical, and I'd like to believe, I think it's true that a lot of America makes that distinction. I found out that the people in the medical marijuana industry, certainly nothing is 100% universal,
Right.
but the vast majority of them do not make that distinction at all.
That's interesting.
That, they believe in medical, therefore they believe in recreational, and act that way.
Now, it's funny you should say that. I'm gonna refer to a guy that has a show here. Tony, what's the doctor's name again?
Dr. 420.
Doctor. Well, there you go. We have a Dr. 420 show here, Brian, and we might refer you to the host. He's a medical doctor, and interestingly, apparently based on what you just said, he holds a minority position because Tony, correctly, he's all for the medical part, but he says, listen, all this crap about it doesn't impair your driving and stuff. Yeah, it does, right?
Right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But
and I think most of America feels that way.
Well, but you're saying the industry takes it to be that medical and recreational are one and the same kind of merge.
Well, they just think it just seems to be. I can't,
Interesting.
Not to get into their minds, but it just seems that the vast majority of people who are pro medical marijuana are also pro recreation.
Now, I've never tried it, right? And I grew up around it. Listen, I grew up in the '70s, right? I mean, love flower power. Talk about marijuana, right? And I just never interested. And the people that used it, and some of my family members, unfortunately, and other people, I just seem to dumb you down a little bit. I don't know. That was my position. Not a moral thing. Again, you want to put something in your body that's totally your business, as long as it doesn't affect everybody else, right? But
I think it's a misnomer to say that it never affects anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, there's some extreme positions on that. But here's where I come back, and this is we talk about the moral thing. Here's my medical argument for it. And tell me what you think about this. And by the way, we are going to talk about your book. Go to the website, the marijuanaproject.org, and look up Brian's book. And by the way, Tony and I were laughing, thinking, how the heck did you get that website address? Because there's website addresses for marijuana, and somebody forgot to register the marijuanaproject.org. I mean,
they did .com, so I had to go with .org.
I'm surprised somebody didn't have that. That's fabulous. You have it. I mean, yeah.
No, the .com was gone, but
sure.
.org wasn't.
So the marijuanaproject.org is where Brian's book is, and you guys can take a look at that. And it's an interesting study in security and medical. So here's the medical argument. And I just got off the phone with a guy in Canada on the way to the studio who's going to do another show about medical marijuana security in Canada. Completely different.
Right.
If we treated oxycodone in the same way as we treat marijuana as a, quote, medical a prescription drug or whatever you want to call it, right? We'd all be dead. Okay? Because in L.A., you need you can open a clinic in Massachusetts. You can't open a clinic, and some it's legal, some it's not legal. And Canada's model is that basically they have their version of the FDA regulated. It makes sense to me. It seems less legitimate to me in the United States, and I'm not a government regulation guy, Tony, right? Am I the opposite of that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But when it comes to things like drugs, we can't have 25 different strains of oxycodone running around that you can pick and choose from. People would die. So, Brian, what do you think about that? Why hasn't the government stepped in and said, listen, it's illegal federally, but we got to do something to make it the same?
Right. So, and for California, you're probably right. For the state I'm in, I disagree with what you're saying.
Okay.
Because, for the most part, okay, probably in my state, half the people that get their medical marijuana cards are not doing it for legitimate medical purposes.
All right.
So that needs to be tightened down a bit.
And by the way, that's okay to say that, and that's a legitimate argument because half the people that use oxycodone probably don't.
Right.
Seriously, right?
That's true.
So,
right.
Yeah.
But
so
for
I'm okay
those
with that.
other half, it is extremely regulated. There has to be, all the markings on the bottles. and it has, there's only a certain amount that can be prescribed per month, and there is a database, so they can't, go from one to the other to the other. So I think if, at least in my state, if oxycodone was treated that way, it wouldn't be perfect, but I think it would be better than what it is.
All right. So with all these regulations in place, are there any statistics in your state on how that's affecting crime and
No,
those kind of things?
you can't even. That is like off limits.
Oh, you don't even bring it up because you'll get. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you can't even find those statistics in Colorado. I mean, I've talked to colleagues in Colorado, tried to find the statistics myself. To do that, there's a lot of anecdotal stuff, but no one wants to give any information.
Now that's an interesting point.
Just had this thing a month ago where Oklahoma, sues Colorado because they got the statistics saying, look, the crime in overflow into the northern part of our state is because of what's happening in Colorado.
Oh, I heard that. I heard about that. Yeah.
The Supreme Court shut that down. You can't sue another state for that reason. But Colorado doesn't want to have any part of it because, they're making money and it's political. But talk to law enforcement in Colorado and they're like, they're getting killed.
Now that's interesting because you can pull up FBI stats on drugs and the drug war, and there's all kinds of data on that. And marijuana is included in those statistics on number of sales, number of arrests, all that kind of stuff, right?
Right, but it's not. The problem is it's not illegal. So how do you, when the underlying issue is legal, but because it's legal, it's creating other crime problems. How do you make that connection? And unfortunately, you can only make it in some instances anecdotally, and then talk to law enforcement and say, yeah, this is the reason why, but we can't arrest people, for this other thing. Something's on the books. You look at the call for service, all right, and it's for this crime, but the underlying problem is really for the marijuana use.
Well, is it? I should be better phrased in this kind of stuff, but it's something that bugs me, so I don't pay attention to it. Is it really legal in your state, or is it decriminalized? There's a difference. Some states it's decriminalized, but it's still federally illegal, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure it's legal anywhere to have 50 kilos of marijuana in your trunk, regardless, right?
So what
Correct.
actually? What
right? In my state, the medical is legal. It's decriminalized up for a certain amount. Up
right.
to, I don't know what the number of ounces is.
It's not a lot, right? So
no, it's not a lot. So they claim their rationale is that they're still going after the dealers, but they're not going to nail the people with just simple possession.
Yeah, which by the way, I'm not 100% against per se, unless you're involved in drunk driving, you're hurting somebody, all that kind of thing. But it's dishonest for the industry to not put out the real facts and the statistics because, if we stop so many people with kilos in their car and we had those stats, we may figure out that the legitimate side's being hurt by that, right? Because it's not working together, and it's just some guy growing it in his backyard, selling it to a clinic on the corner, and then it's not regulated. You don't know.
But that goes back to my point. The vast majority of people that are pro medical marijuana are also pro recreational, so they see no distinction, so they have no reason to put that stuff out.
You had a question, Tony?
Well, I was just going to say, as a law enforcement officer, former law enforcement officer, what is it to take to make it a felony of a certain
back in the day, there was two laws that we got you on, right? So there's possession for use and possession for sale. Mm-hmm. So if you had a little bag, a dime bag they used to call it, or where you got your pipe in the dashboard, that kind of thing. That was kind of objectively personal use, right? But when I popped your trunk and you had a couple kilos, that's for sale. And the average prudent person would say, yeah, you're probably selling it to your friends and using it. And then you jump into felony, right? And that goes for mostly any drug. There's possession for use, possession for sale. So it wasn't a high threshold, by the way. And I don't remember the number, but it wasn't a pound, right? It was, less than 8 ounces is personal, something like that. And maybe Brian knows some numbers on that. But
no, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that as they legitimize it, there's still a whole underlying criminal element happening because really, do I want to pay my secretary to sell marijuana? Or I just want to sit on the corner and make more money? We're all entrepreneurs here in the United States, right? So you can see the bad guys are making tons and tons of money. And by the way, the clinics are paying taxes, right, Brian? It's all legitimate business.
Oh, absolutely.
And
They're
who
state-
wants to do that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, so we hit the medical side, we hit the moral side. And what was my third leg? I can't remember now.
Legal.
You must be having some residual blow off from your video camera there. All right. So on the legal side, let's talk about how you get into managing the protection for the clinics, what you're required to do as a security provider, and what some laws are involved. And as I was telling you pre-show, in Canada, there's some actual requirements that say you have to keep videotape of a clinic for 2 years. That's unheard of in the United States. Nobody keeps video for 2 years, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
what in your state specifically? What kind of requirements do you have as a security provider?
Right. So in my state, it was the video for 90 days, but the everything is certainly regulated and mandated as far as what security had to be in the production facilities. Basically, you had to have cameras in every area that had marijuana was in. You have to have access control. You have to limit what personnel goes into what part of the facility based on whether their job performance, requires them to be there. You certainly have to keep track of the product through the process for any loss, which, we can get into is nice to say, but virtually impossible
Right.
to do. And you had to report any loss, of anything that happened. You had to keep all the records for X amount of time. Like you said, the video for 90 days. You had, certainly you had to have either safes or vaults to put finished product in. Trying to think of the other big ones. They had some silly ones with burglar alarm system, and we were a 24/7 operation. Yet we had a burglar alarm system, which
Oh, that's interesting.
I went to the state and said, this doesn't make any sense, and they basically said we don't care.
Well, they have to have it in case whoever's running the clinic forgets that they're open or closed. I mean, it affects your memory, right? I mean,
I was like, I had 24-hour guard coverage and a personnel, as well as an actual employee on site all the time.
and they have to have a
we had
burglar
to have
alarm.
a
That's
burglar alarm
interesting.
system, so that was great. So yeah, stupid things. And they were so behind the times, actually, that they said I had to have a voice dialer. I said, well, it's illegal to have a voice dialer.
Oh, how interesting.
They're like, oh, well, I guess you can't do that. No, can't do that. So God knows what they pulled the regulations out of when they put it on paper. So I mean, it wasn't overall, though. It was pretty good. The regulations were pretty stringent.
They're trying. All right. So now, is there an analogy between this sort of security and an oxycodone plant? Do they require similar things? I'm
Yes,
not
they
an
do.
expert on this, but I haven't really heard of it.
Yeah, I've done work for other pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
And yes, they do. But the big thing between the marijuana and the oxycodone, or any other drug for that matter, is the tracking through the process. So I'm sure you're familiar with serialization,
Right.
and so they're able to track, okay, from when we start this to the pill, to the bottle, to the truck, to the pharmacy, to the person. You can't do that with marijuana because it's a living plant, and it loses moisture, so it loses weight. It's impossible to track everything through the process.
Right.
So it sounds good, but it's really, untenable. You can track it from once you have a completed product and into the bottle and where it goes, but that's not a requirement in the industry, and at least in my state, no one does it.
See, to me, again, and I will flat out say that I'm not for any of this, by the way, but I'm not passing judgment on it. It's, it's a lifestyle thing, right? But it's just dishonest to me, right? So why don't they just make it a pill that says, remember Quaaludes? Are you old enough to remember Quaaludes?
I remember, but
Yeah, it was back in the day. That was a thing in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, Roar 314 or something was on every little pill, and it was stamped, and there was a number on it, and you knew that was a Quaalude, or
Right.
supposedly, right? That's part of the marking, regulation, tracking, all that kind of thing. And if I was a cop and I stopped you, I had my physician's desk reference, and I got it out, and I went, okay, there's a Quaalude, and there's this, and there's some speed, and we knew, right? Why don't they just if they're so concerned about the medical issue, why don't they just put THC in a pill and sell it to people as a prescription pill? I'd have far less problem with that than I do with this, my guard showing up at work one day, Tony. Did I ever tell you this too? So Brian, I'm at work. I'm running a studio in my guard company.
Right.
And I go to the gate, and I'm overcome by marijuana, and I'm like, "What's going on?"
Right.
And I said, "Hey, dude guard, what's going on, dude?" "Oh, well, I have to smoke marijuana at work." I said, "Why?" "Well, because I have a medical condition. I have a note right here." I said, "Nowhere does it say you can get stoned at the gate of the studio on legal marijuana, right?" And there's this. This is why I say it's not legitimate. If you had a condition and you could put it in a pill and take it, I mean, if you had a pain issue, wouldn't that be a better thing? I don't know. What do you think, Brian? Am I wrong?
Well, right. So you bring up two different points. So let's start with the one about the workplace, because I actually did a lot of research on this. So medical marijuana is not a condition or an element, a condition, or whatever that is protected under the American with Disabilities Act.
Okay, that's a good point.
Okay, so there is no requirement for an employee to allow anyone at work to be under the influence of marijuana. You cannot discriminate against them. In other words, you can't not hire them or fire them because they're a medical marijuana patient and they use it outside of work, but you're under no requirement to have them use it at work, and you have the right to fire them if they are under the influence of it at work. They treat it very similar to alcohol.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, if you come in to hire with me and you test positive in the drug test, I don't have to hire you.
That's correct.
That's for sure. Any positive test for a drug.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
But if someone has a legitimate, it does it at home and has a legitimate prescription for it, you cannot fire them.
Right.
But so they treat it like alcohol. I think that's fair. As far as having it only in a pill, I'm no expert at this, so I'm only going by what I'm told, because I've asked similar questions. And the reason I am told that they give you, you have options of edibles, cookies or whatever, or vapes or oils and capsules as well is an option, is that the different methods of delivery have different absorption rates in the body, and your particular illness may require a different absorption rate, which in some degree dictates the method in which you're going to receive it. That's what I'm told. I cannot speak to.
Well, that's not dissimilar to regular medication. I mean, some people absorb certain medications better than others. They don't. Antibiotics don't work on others. So I will take that as a legitimate argument from them, except, again, they still treat them differently than regular drugs that have the same issues. And that's
Agreed.
a part that I don't get. It just kind of, it's kind of weird to me. And we had this,
right. And, and the thing is too, yeah, right. And it's the part of the problem is that, and it parallels some of the real problems with running security in one of these facilities, is that none of the people in the industry, a month, 2 months, a month or two prior to this facility opening, these guys were making it in their basement, hiding from the police.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Right. Now, all of a sudden, you're telling them, okay, they're going to do it legitimately, but they only, they have no experience in the pharmaceutical industry. They have no experience of what are the different ways we can, make this. They come from, I'm growing it in my backyard, and that's it. So I don't want to say learning curve, because I think that might not be the right word, but there's a large educational process that has not yet taken place.
So this is a good point. They come from growing it in their basement and selling it on the street, and now it's legal, and they have to turn it into a business. And I'm kind of thinking they don't have those kind of business skills. Probably not.
No, it was the biggest problem when I was the manager at the facility.
Nor do I think they view it as, let's say there's a problem in a clinic. I'm not sure they view it as a business problem as opposed to criminal problem is not the right word. In other words, they're functioning as a business the same way they functioned as a drug dealer. Is that a good way to look at it? Kind of.
Well, you're right. Yeah, right. So they don't understand. First of all, security's the bad guy. And
right.
I can understand that because they've been ingrained in that for how many years. So I told them till I was blue in the face, I'm actually here to help. If we do this right, none of us are going to get in trouble, and we're going to survive and prosper for a long time. That does not sink in. I'm the enemy because, I'm in charge of the guys with guns. So I'm the enemy.
Now, in your state, just to clarify this with people, you're
Yeah.
required to be there as the security provider, correct?
No, the security guards were not required.
Oh, that's interesting. I must have missed that. Okay. So there's other regulations, but providing a guard's not one of them. Cameras, yes. Burglar alarms, yes, but not a guard.
We felt, when I designed the program and the owners agreed with me, I said to have this facility and not have an armed guard on site is foolish beyond belief.
Right. Okay.
Keep in mind, as an aside, when I started this, I did the numbers. Okay, I asked them, okay, what kind of weight are you going to have here and so forth, and they gave me the numbers, and I didn't know what that translated into. I did some research, and I'm like, oh, holy cow, you're talking at any one time in this facility, and this is just one facility in the state, there's anywhere from $1 to $4 million worth of product, just as good as cash on hand all the time
in an average facility,
right? And
man,
I mean, that's more than
we're in
most
the
of
wrong
the
business,
banks
Tony.
in our state.
We're in the wrong business.
Area. So, and they're still robbing banks.
Right.
I said, this, you have to do this, and they agreed. But back to the other issue, they, to them, making this product and stuffing a little bit in their pocket and walking out the door is business as usual and no big deal, and trying to make them understand, no, that's actually theft and a crime. It was difficult.
Now, can you get in trouble as the security provider under your regulations for not reporting certain things? Are you required to say, I saw a guy put some marijuana in his pocket, and the owner said, don't worry about it? I mean,
yes.
All right.
No, so without getting into details, there was an incident at the facility, and I was told, to do something that was not to the regulations, and I made it clear that was not going to happen.
Well, Chuck, you know what time
it's
it
a
is?
problem.
Oh, is it time for a little update? Brian?
It's time to take a break.
We are going to take a quick break. I have a little insert here from one of our friends, and not quite a sponsor, but maybe. Good old John from PlateSmart. We're going to do a little 3-minute update. He has some terrorism information for us we're going to play, and we'll be back in a minute on Security Guy Radio, so stand by.
Hello, Chuck. Tonight I wanted to touch upon a report I came across last week. This report was published by a group called Action on Armed Violence. In this report, Unacceptable Harm, they showed that over 33,000 civilian deaths were attributed to explosive devices in 2015. This is a 54% increase over the numbers from 2011. This report's pretty dramatic in the fact that it shows that our threat from terrorism is growing. It's not decreasing, as we are being led to believe by other groups. In addition, over 9,000 individuals were killed by suicide bombers in 2015 alone. This is a number that is much larger than the previous year. We do know that terrorism is growing worldwide. We know that it's a threat here in the United States. We have to look at new technologies here in the United States because ISIS has shown itself to be an adaptable, smart, intelligent terrorist group. They no longer use traditional methodologies of communication that we can readily intercept with electronic means. So we have to look at indicators of intent. We know that they do not wear uniforms, which is another major indicator. So what do? We have to look at technology such as video analytics. Video analytics are a great indicator of intent. Why? Because they take uncommon behavior, such as a vehicle driving around a building 6 or 7 times, and all of a sudden stopping in front of that building and then blowing up. That's the Timothy McVeigh situation. Had we utilized LPR, we could have identified that situation and said that this vehicle has done this activity. We need to start utilizing this type of technology in much greater numbers here domestically in order to identify these groups that would do harm to us. We know that these groups are growing in strength. We have over 1,000 active investigations against ISIS members as of 2015. We know that they are recruiting in all 50 states. So they are growing much faster than our methodologies by which we can identify them. So Through the use of ALPR technologies and other video analytic technologies, we can start to identify indicators of intent. And that's what exactly these technologies provide us. Unfortunately, we do not have these technologies fully deployed at this time. But as we start to deploy these technologies in greater numbers, the technology itself will start to indicate who these people are and will help us identify these events before they can occur. And hopefully we can prevent the next 9/11 from occurring.
All right, welcome back. Security Guy Radio with our special guest, Brian Laslow of the marijuanaproject.org, a book he's written about security in production facilities. Is production facility the right way to say, or manufacturing facility, Brian?
Well, same thing, yeah.
Okay.
Same thing. Yeah.
And maybe we haven't been super clear about that from the beginning of the show, because again, I'm affected by all this talk and THC, and I may be a little bit stoned myself. But a production facility, wholly different than the big green cross where people are selling it, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And in my state, they separated the production facilities from the dispensaries.
Dispensary, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, they're called different things. In some states, they're vertical markets, so the where they manufacture it can be the same business that is the dispensary. They just have to be like 300 feet apart or something. In my state, they have to be different businesses, can't be owned by the same people. But in a production facility, it goes right from seed all the way into final product that's packaged and ready for sale.
Now, here I knew a guy that was doing this, and if I remember, this is years ago, and if I remember, he was growing his own and then selling it, and that was all okie dokie. I like the idea that these things are separated legally. I mean, you can't just have a Vail corporation and say, oh, yeah, I don't own that, but I do. I mean, they watch that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, that they
Yeah.
were very careful about, yeah.
So here's my question. Why doesn't, Johnson & Johnson and Merck and all these places, why aren't they in this space? Why aren't they the producers or the production facility? And who gets to be a production facility? I mean, in your state, is there one of them or 10 of them or what?
Right. Well, that's, yeah. So two different questions. But the second question is there are 4 in the state, and you had to go through an application process. I believe 44 companies applied.
Oh.
And 4 licenses were granted. The question of whether or not a pharmaceutical is getting in is a fascinating question.
Everybody hates them, right? So I can't see the state giving. I'm not picking on anybody, Merck or somebody. I can't see them giving them a contract for it.
Well, I don't think any of them applied. If you ask the pro marijuana people, and so I'm lumping them into a group, but
sure.
But I think probably almost universally, if you ask them, it's because that the big pharma companies are protecting their own and want to villainize marijuana, and marijuana is bad and our product is good, and they're trying to protect their company and their product. So I think that segment, the industry thinks there is a major hatred and distaste in the marijuana industry for pharmacy.
Sure, it's a cultural. Yeah, I can see that. Obviously,
right. They hate them. I mean,
with a passion, hatred.
Right? And however, the funny thing is that from everything I hear, that the production companies that are owned by not the true believers but business people,
right?
Their end game is actually to sell the business to a pharmaceutical company.
Oh, that's interesting.
And make their however many millions of dollars that they're going to make at the end.
So they got a 5-year plan or whatever their plan is in place.
Exactly.
When that's going to come of age. Very interesting.
So there's a disconnect. Okay, are they counting on the fact that marijuana is either going to become so legal, so popular, or become commonplace known that it's a good thing? And I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that
right.
Thought process that now pharmacies are not going to look at it as, oh, forget them, we're protecting our own, and are going to want a piece of it. I don't know. It's very fascinating, though, and I think in 5 or 10 years, I think that's going to be the one thing I'm going to be most interested in, is where do the pharmaceutical companies stand with it now? That's going to be very fascinating.
Well, I can see that argument that they're they want to sell their version of pain treatment pills, whatever, right? But for gosh sakes, the money's money, right? Whether it's green,
Well, right.
or,
So what difference does it make? Right.
I'm not sure that's the 420 support argument, which sounds good to them, but I'm not sure that's a pharmaceutical argument. They're probably waiting to see
I
what.
don't know. I mean, they claim that the pharmaceuticals are, and their lobbyists are in bed with the government, and that's why it's still federally illegal. And,
well, that's a maybe, right?
I've seen things where lobbyists are saying that to the federal government, so that has some ring of truth to it, but I don't know to what degree.
Well, I could see that, right? So from an operational point of view, a big farm would not want to have 50 different departments in 50 different states to figure out what the law is and how to distribute it. It doesn't make any sense. That makes
right.
But,
no, that doesn't make any sense.
But eventually that's going to change. Eventually we're all going to be stoned. The whole country's going to be stoned, or we're going to be little enclaves of it's absolutely illegal in this state and it's legal over here. I think eventually that's where it's going to come down to, and then maybe there'll be a place. I just think if Big Farm thought they could make $1 billion on this, and by the way, if you got $4 million cash sitting in this little store down in West LA that used to be Kentucky Fried Chicken, and now it's called KF something, but they played on Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's a giant cross, and if you got $4 million sitting in there, that's way more than Big Pharma has sitting down at CVS Pharmacy, okay, for their drugs.
Right, but I think there's another element though.
All right,
and that is that because it's federally illegal, there is no, and I mean no, legitimate medical research that proves the effectiveness of marijuana. Now, I'm not saying marijuana is not effective for certain diseases. I believe it is. I think there's a ton of anecdotal evidence that, there are not correct studies done that also, not totally legitimate medical studies done that suggest it, and I believe it. But there are no double-blind studies by the American Medical Association or anybody else that can prove that this dose of this percentage of CBD or THC is effective in fighting this disease.
So
it does not exist. So I think the pharmaceutical companies are scared to death because they have the deep pockets of being sued. Whereas, who's going to sue the marijuana production facility who's not making any money yet?
Well, that's an excellent point, because really it's contra to their process, which is research, test, double blind, and then 10 years later, Viagra comes out. Okay,
correct.
Could have come out in a month, but that's not how we do things in America.
Correct.
So I could see them doing that. I mean, that's a legitimate position.
I think that's the biggest reason is they're just scared to death of being sued.
Now, tell me why there isn't any legitimate research, because plenty of people that I know that support it would argue and cite all these studies, proof. And I used to say, come right along in the patrol car with me one day, all right, and see if all those things make sense to you.
Right.
Because I deal with practical experience, not a medical report. Well,
right.
I wouldn't. Did you know there's no legitimate American Medical Association studies? I thought for sure there was.
No, zero. And there can't be, as long as it's
illegal.
Illegal.
Yeah. Well, no, wait a minute, though. Hold on.
They don't exist.
Yeah, but you see a lot of medical research. Well, maybe the more discussion papers. I mean, cocaine and heroin and things. Why has that been studied more? Been around longer or what?
There's a million white papers. There's a million anecdotal evidences. Right. There's a million what they call studies that is basically, we interviewed 4 people and they said it did great for them. Okay. No, I'm serious.
I
right?
believe
and they call
you.
that a study.
Yeah.
And they get up and they, and in their conferences and they say, we have this study and this study, and I can cite you 1,000 studies. The fact is, no, you can't cite me one. You can cite, anecdotal evidence disguised as a study. And by the way, and I tell them, and I'll tell you the same, and I believe them. Okay. I mean, I am a believer that medical marijuana does do good for certain people for certain diseases.
Right. Okay.
So I believe that to be true, but don't tell me there's studies out there that prove it, because there's not.
All right. So what's the disconnect here? Because I'm pretty open-minded on things. I'm going to listen to you. I have my beliefs, and I'm a stubborn old curmudgeon on some areas. But if you can persuade me, I'll listen. It seems like the industry is completely shooting themselves in the foot by not going this direction. But maybe they don't really care because it's just all about making cash, and we don't care about all that legal, medical, legitimate stuff. Because it's a political movement more so than a a medical movement, right?
Right. No, in fairness to them, they can't. It's federally illegal. They can't. The American Medical Association can't do the studies.
Well, but
The
you could hire a private entity to do it.
Yes, you could. But then the problem is, at least in Canal, maybe they can do that in Colorado and Washington
Right.
and those things, and even California, they'd have a better chance than in my state. But in my state, our production facility tried to cut a deal with a hospital in the state to have some hospital do research, and the hospital came back and said, we'd love to, but we can't. And the reason is because the state told them they're not patients, so therefore
No.
the production facility could not provide the hospital with the marijuana to do the study because the hospital had no legal reason to have the marijuana.
Now, what about studies overseas? Surely it's legal in some countries, and they've done all this.
Right.
Anything?
So there was a study in Israel that they the industry puts a lot of weight in, but it was only done on animals, not humans.
Why would they put that report forward? Because they're stoned. And I win again. I win the argument. I mean, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
By the way, Brian, I must say, you do have a certain look to you in this Skype video, don't you think?
Yeah, you do.
He's got the light behind him. This looks like completely out of central casting, like he's a boss. He's a drug lord, right? Doesn't it? It's kind of cool,
Yeah,
actually.
You don't want to see what's behind the screen.
Oh no, I don't want to see what's behind the screen. You don't want to see what's behind mine either, actually.
The thing is, but you've hit it on the nail. It so delegitimizes their point. I've had people tell me that there are videos done in, I don't know, one of the Slavic countries.
Right.
I don't know which one it was, Norway or Sweden or something. But there's a video out there that absolutely proves that marijuana cures cancer. And I go and I said, well, if that's true, why don't we see it? And their answer, well, the government is hiding. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, you put me in touch with that guy in Sweden, and I'll cut a deal with him. And I will bring him here and bring his study here, and I will get the cameras here, and I will take all the responsibility for it. All right. And I will have every news agency in the world, in my living room. Okay. And we're going to do this study, and I'll split the proceeds 50-50. Well, no one has taken me up on the offer because it's all crap. And it's like, you can't make statements like that when there's no proof to it. And
they live in the country of Krapistan.
It really is too bad.
Krapistan is their country.
It's too bad because, and look, hey, I mean, I'm saying this, and for all I know, a year from now, all 50 states will be legal, and no one's going to care. But it just seems to me that you'd be much better off if you were more reasonable about it and only said things that you could prove.
My guest is Brian Laslow of the MarijuanaProject.org, a book he's written, a fictional book about non-fictional events, so to speak, about the business. Now, you've pushed me a little bit to the no side for this reason.
Okay.
I see it becoming legal most places, right? I think that's going to happen. Everybody's kidding themselves to think they're going to stop it. It's a cultural change, right?
Yeah.
But I want everybody to think about this. We're going to turn on these laws and open up these clinics and start dispensing marijuana to everybody. And you know what? It didn't go through that vetting process that we've done with all kinds of other drugs in the world. And I think that's a problem. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why do they get a pass on being scrutinized? Why don't they get a pass on the research? Why don't they get a pass on all the billions that's spent on testing and all that kind of stuff, right? I think that's a problem, which makes it think to me it's really more of a political movement than a legitimate movement. But
I agree. And their answer is going to be because it's a plant. It's nothing man-made.
Okay, well, there's plenty of things that come from plants that we use medicinally. I mean, that's not,
Right, but
let's regulate chamomile tea because it puts you to sleep. I mean, you can't drink chamomile tea without falling asleep, so you better not be driving if you're drinking tea. I mean, it's a stupid argument.
I'm not agreeing with it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I know it's weird.
That's what the argument is.
Now, tell us about your book, and
Yes.
I know you have the secret lighting there for protecting your secret identity and all that kind of stuff. But whatever you can share about how it's based on true incidents and what it's about and how we can get a hold of it and stuff, because it sounds really good.
Yeah, thank you. So it is well, I mean, it's no secret. I'm the main character in the book,
Okay.
name change and everything.
Yeah.
So it is the story of a security consultant who has an ethical dilemma about taking on a medical marijuana client. And so the main story of the book and what happens to the main character is certainly fictional. So I don't want anybody reading it and saying, "Oh, whoa, that happened." Where
Right.
no, it didn't. So that story is fictional, but certainly, all the security elements in it. Not necessarily what's in place at the facility, but the the legitimacy of the security elements and what they are and what they do is all true. And certainly the ethical dilemma that is described is exactly the ethical dilemma that I went through all through the process of my time at the facility. And so I wove that ethical dilemma in with the with security elements in what I hope to be a fun suspense novel that people enjoy reading. I tried to make it certainly not preachy in any way. And what it kind of makes me feel good is I have had people both on the pro and the con side of medical marijuana, tell me that they think, hey, yeah, I did justice to their side, which is really good because I tried to make it down the middle and not make any judgments.
Good. Well, in the middle is a place any argument should be for anything, literally.
Sure.
I mean, we have all kinds of things in the news now that are politically charged, and the reason it's so emotional is because people don't want to go to the middle. Just argue it. Let's go to the middle, and if you don't agree, go back to your corner, right? But if you can't come to the middle to start the conversation, it usually has a much poorer outcome and stuff. So, Brian, where can we get a hold of the book? Where's a good place to buy it?
It's on Amazon, but you can also go to themarijuanaproject.org, and there are links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and so forth on there. It's only available online right now, and also available though on Kindle and iTunes, so you can get an ebook version as well.
All right, excellent. My guest, Brian Laslow, themarijuanaproject.org. I'm going to put the in front of it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So check out the book, and did you learn something, Tony? Right? Every show I do, we learn something.
I learned a lot.
Everything I ever wanted to know about a marijuana production facility. And I've been surprised by some of these answers, Brian. It's really, really fascinating topic. So some of my Facebook friends who are 420 friendly, check out the video on the Facebook page. And we will see you next week for another exciting non-stone episode of Security Guy Radio. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.